Let's talk about journaling. It seems like it's on an upward trend. There's people putting research into journaling and whether or not it's effective for mental health and all that kind of stuff. I think that's a good thing. Journaling works really well to help people deal with their past, but it also helps you deal with your present and it helps you deal with your future because journaling is ultimately about creating the person that you want to be. One of the main things that people are struggling with right now, if we want to try and boil it down to like a single thing, I think is living intentionally. That was much easier for our ancestors. They only had so many options. So even though there were like downsides to their lifestyle, they had some upsides too. We have so many inputs, so many things, so much data is coming at us from outside of our sphere of control. It's very hard for us not to be reactive and live in a way that is more effective and intentional. Our lives are flooded with distractions and easy sources of pleasure. We have video games, we have social media, we have streaming services, we have access to all kinds of drugs. Our phones are constantly fighting to get our attention. There is such a war on for our attention. They actually have this thing called the attention economy, which is basically the idea that our attention is a scarce commodity. And there are neuroscientists and behavioral economists studying how to get us to spend more time on technology and more time on the internet and more time shopping. As someone with a background in anthropology, I always like to take kind of an evolutionary perspective on this. We just didn't evolve to handle this level of distraction very well. Our emotions and mental processes are built for a very different kind of environment that moved at a very different kind of pace than this one. So we have a hard time processing all this data. Because even as we're trying to process all these bits of information coming in, more of it just keeps flooding at us like a fire hose. It can be overwhelming. We can develop anxiety, we can develop chronic stress, depression, simply because we can't sort out what of this information is important and what isn't. So the overarching solution to this problem, I think, is living with intention. And that's something easy to say, but it's harder to do because living with intention means you have to know what your intentions are. And that's where journaling actually becomes a really valuable tool. When journaling is done properly, it isn't just the events of your day and how you feel about them. It's not a diary. Journaling is an exploration of your past, but it's also an exploration of your intentions for your future. When we do it right, we start to tackle problems that we might have been avoiding, and we start to deal with things that maybe we don't normally want to deal with. But we're not doing this in real life yet, so it's more like a rehearsal version of dealing with it. Our mind can prepare itself and manage the problem and come to grips with the emotions that go along with it before actually having to tackle it in the real world. The Stoics had this idea that you meditate and write about bad things that may happen. You start to accept these things before they actually come to pass. And that way, you're ready emotionally to deal with them if they do actually happen, and you can handle them in a way that's more effective. Same thing here. Journaling done properly isn't like ruminating or getting into a negative thought spiral. You write with honesty, you write with openness. If you're avoiding something, why are you avoiding it? If something is uncomfortable, why is it uncomfortable? You kind of get down into the nitty-gritty of things, and then you can start to resolve them internally before you head out and start resolving them out there in the world. And a very cool thing happens when you start to experience negative emotions while journaling, because it's not like a full-on emotion. Like I say, it's the rehearsal emotion. But it can act as sort of an exposure therapy, like you get better at dealing with these difficult feelings and emotions because you're doing them in a practice setting. You will start to find that you can go through difficult experiences and handle things better because you are doing the reps. You're practicing dealing with negative emotions on a regular basis. The other great thing about journaling is it can take us out of this shame and blame mindset. Once again, the Stoics knew what they were doing here. When we take a broader view on an incident and spend some time examining it, we can kind of see our part in it, and we can also figure out what other people's parts are. We can see who's responsible for what. So if we start out journaling and we're thinking like the world's against us and nobody treats us the way they should and everybody's at fault and everything that happens to me is somebody else's responsibility, over time, as we start to examine these events and we look at our own behaviors and our own emotions, we'll start to find more balance in the journal, and that will be because we're finding more balance in our thinking about these things. Same thing if we have like shame and low self-worth. Journaling can actually start to uncover what is good about us, what makes us feel good about ourselves, the things that we do well, the relationships that bring value into our lives. So we can start to, again, find that balance between the way we feel about ourselves initially, and over time we're going to start to see more of a relationship between ourselves and the world, which has a better sense of equanimity to it. A good journal should be a conversation with yourself at the end of the day. It should be honest, it should be complete. Journals shouldn't really concern themselves with other people. You're the main character in your own story. These other people are just side characters in this story. They appear in it, but it's your thoughts, your values, your feelings that matter. And the work is to kind of distill that stuff down so you figure out what matters and you figure out what you're going to do about it. So this kind of intentionality can be difficult if you haven't done it before, especially if you have depression or less stress. It's not just about habits. Your brain is actually weighted towards reactivity. So you have to start a training protocol to kind of get yourself in the right condition. I do this by setting intentions in the morning, and some people do that with journaling. I do that with meditation, and then later in the day I sort of review my day and say, like, did I act the way I intended? What were the events of my day and how did I approach them? How did I handle them? What was my behavior? Am I avoiding anything? Did I miss anything? And how did I feel about that? I also use regular journal prompts just to get me thinking about different things and seeing if there's anything else I can uncover there, or to use them to reaffirm my sense of my own values. And every second day I journal gratitude. I don't do it every day, but you can. I write down kind of 5 to 10 things that I've been grateful for, and that sort of reminds my own brain that there is a lot to be grateful for, not to focus on the negative, but actually dig out the positive, because with all the stresses that come at us in life, it's very easy to get caught in a negative thought spiral, and it's very important to reaffirm all the positive. So eventually, as you practice this more, you're going to become accountable to your journal. Mine actually stares at me at night sometimes. You'll find you're more apt to get things done. You'll start to sort out what's important to you and what isn't. You'll start to sort out what you can control and what you can't control. And that's going to help you sleep better at night, quite frankly, because you're going to do all that you can do and realize that that's all you can do.